Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast. Something a little bit different for you today. Aston Villa are well within the chase for the Champions League places. In amongst it with Manchester City, Chelsea, maybe, Nottingham Forest and Newcastle United, this weekend's opponents. Now, for this episode, I've caught up with individuals from each of those clubs, podcasters, journalists, to get the lowdown on their side of things. Their form, injuries, momentum, whether they'll actually get into the top five or not. So consider this podcast a bit of a explainer on the rest of the clubs. Obviously, we all know everything about Villa, the challenges that we face, key fixtures that might make the difference, but it's interesting to look at those other sides as well. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed putting it together. So without any further ado, we're going to start with the club that I personally believe is the least likely to challenge for a Champions League place, Chelsea. Right, Tom, cheers for joining us. You're our Chelsea fan. For those that are listening, you've got a Chelsea shirt on, although you can't quite see the badge. How's things, mate? You okay?
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for having me on. If you'd have asked me about 24 hours ago, I'd probably be in a better mood and feeling a bit more positive, but things have changed.
I don't care about your season so far and what's led to this point. It's all about the recent form. That's what really matters. What's the mood like for you and for Chelsea fans with how things are right now?
Yeah, it's been really poor and really poor for quite a while. You say you don't care about the season to date. Basically, 2025 as a whole has been pretty shocking for Chelsea. It's bottom half Premier League form as from the year. Like even the recent wins against sort of Leicester, Southampton, and in the Conference League, that they're sort of papering over cracks. They don't really mean that much because the quality of opposition just hasn't been there. And I think after beating Tottenham just after the international break, I think the draw to Brentford and the manner of it, rotating players out and then failing to beat Ipswich at home, has really dampened the season. Chelsea fans weren't particularly confident about finishing in the top five anyway because of what is to come. And failing to take more than 2 points from these two games is just any chance that Chelsea did have, it now looks incredibly, incredibly tough because they're out of form, they're out of confidence, the atmosphere at the club is bad, there's toxicity and animosity towards Enzo Maresca, he's not happy with the fans, the best players are returning but they're out of form. It just looks like a perfect storm in a terrible, terrible way for Chelsea right now, and I just don't think people are that confident that anything positive is going to come from this season now.
Yeah, it is really interesting how things change. At the start of the season, I don't think I did have Chelsea in my top four, now obviously top five. And then there was a period where it's like, oh, actually, Chelsea are much better than I think a lot of people thought. And I think they will be in that conversation towards the back end of the season. But you're absolutely right that 2025 as a whole has been severely disappointing for a Champions League chasing club. And spoiler alert, I don't think Chelsea will finish in the top five. I'll ask your opinion in a little bit, but I think it's really difficult for you with what's coming up. Before we get to that, just the injury situation, just talk to us a little bit about, obviously this is a Villa podcast. We know loads about Villa, but less about other clubs. What's the situation with the squad and returning players and things like that for the running?
Chelsea had basically their best 11 available yesterday. Reece James is sort of fit, but he's being really carefully managed. He's not able to basically start more than one game a week, and he was chosen to play in midfield on Thursday night in the Conference League, which I think will bother a lot of people. Wesley Fofana and Romeo Lavia are, surprise, out for the rest of the season. To be fair, Lavia could return, but I mean, he can hardly play more than half an hour at the moment. He basically is a write-off. Other than that, Chelsea's squad is actually in a good state of fitness compared to what it has been. Nicholas Jackson, Noni Madueke and Cole Palmer have all returned, but neither look particularly up to their usual quality. Palmer is getting the ball a lot, but not able to influence things. He's scored 2 in 2025, and the last one was at the start of January. Jackson hasn't scored this year, so he's made a big difference coming back, and so has Madueke. He's looked like the most lively winger. But there's been a lot of talk at Chelsea about when the injured players return, they'll be better. But the reality is that actually these players have been out of form for most of the year, even before they got injured. So although the squad is pretty good, and a lot of players are available, Trevor Chalobah's the cover for Wesley Fofana at the back, and that's sort of fine. And in midfield, Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo continue to just run and burn their hamstrings into the ground without midfield depth. So that's sort of fine. It's okay for Chelsea, but it's not transferring itself into results or performances at the moment. So although most players are available, it still doesn't feel like it's going to be enough.
Let's talk about your running then. Obviously, you've still got Conference League football to contend with as well. Fulham, Everton, Liverpool, Newcastle, Man United and Nottingham Forest on the final day, I think is the toughest running that any of these five clubs have. Oh, I think it looks pretty bleak for Chelsea, mate.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the away games in there, you've got like Fulham. Look, that looks like a really really tough game. Newcastle
Yeah.
away it's scary. St James's Park is going to be
Tell us
so
about it.
noisy. It's going to be so loud. Like just in case, like I think it would have been without the Carabao Cup, but now you've got like this whole momentum behind the club. I mean, even the news about Eddie Howe and his health, it's like it's the sort of thing that just gets people behind the team even more.
Yeah.
And Chelsea have been abysmal away from home. They've been absolutely abysmal. The last win was away at Tottenham at the start of December. Their away form is so bad. And I mean, Nottingham Forest, if it goes down to the final day, the City ground is going to be a cauldron of noise, and Chelsea just don't deal with it. Like they can't deal with their own supporters at the moment, let alone the ones of the opposition team. And then the home games, I mean, they're clinging on to the fact that Man United season could be over, but Chelsea don't really beat Man United at home. Like they don't beat Man United full stop. They drew the away game just before Ten Hag got sacked, which sort of sums it all up. Oh no, Ten Hag had been sacked. That was under Van Nistelrooy. I think it might have been his first game. And Chelsea couldn't even beat this Manchester United team. They won the fixture last season, but I mean that was just chaos. That was Parma and chaos.
Yeah.
Like maybe Liverpool have won the league and they drop off, but I'm sure they want to inflict some pain on Chelsea. Like Fulham have got their own ambitions and are a team that are more upwardly mobile and confident. They're playing at home. Everton are confident. They look better than Chelsea.
Everton play a lot of the teams in this conversation as well. Like somebody on one of our podcasts said that Everton hold the key to top five. So I think they're playing Newcastle, yourselves, and one other. I can't remember which one it is. But again, a difficult game under Moyes at the moment.
Yeah, like I tend not to look at it and think, oh, well, the history says that you do poorly in this result, so you're going to do badly again. Like, I don't think it's that simple, but Chelsea have a terrible record against Everton, home and away again. Like, Chelsea's chance was these last two games, 6 points from Brentford and Ipswich, and they've taken 2. And that's so poor. So, yeah, I think even if they had won those 2 games, you'd still be looking at that run-in and going, wow, like these are tricky fixtures. You needed to get the job done earlier. And that's why when Chelsea were second in December, it was like, well, even if they're not going for the title, they will be able to create a buffer and have some room for error in the final stretch of the season. But that's eroded away like before now. And it's like when the chips are down, this Chelsea team don't know how to do it. Newcastle have played big games. Aston Villa have played big games, Champions League matches. You know, Newcastle have now won a cup. This Chelsea team haven't coped under pressure. They haven't proven they can do it. They're young, they're inexperienced, their coach is young, their coach is inexperienced. They don't know how to do it. And that matters for a lot. You know, Manchester City are a champion team and they just sort of, this is what they do. They just revert to winning, even if they're not playing particularly well. So for Chelsea, it looks pretty bleak, I'll be honest.
I wanted this segment to be manager versus Emery, because obviously we're talking to different clubs. So depending on who we speak to, if that's Guardiola versus Emery, maybe that's a different conversation. But again, the clubs that are going against each other here, you back Emery to have more experience than someone like Maresca. It's just that's not disrespectful. That's just fact.
No, yeah, it is. And I think like there's been Chelsea fans where, if you look at Aston Villa signed a Champions League semi-final manager, you know, when they got Unai Emery, and a bloke who had won loads and he'd been in the Premier League before as well. When Chelsea got Maresca, it was a championship winning manager with the biggest budget in the league by country mile. And it was this is his second full season, basically, after being sacked by Parma. Chelsea invested, surprise, surprise, again, in youth and in experience and potential in their manager. And Aston Villa went for something proven. And I was thinking yesterday, it's probably a bit of a moot point, but if you handed Kieran McKenna this Chelsea squad, and if you handed Enzo Maresca the Ipswich squad, I wonder how things would have played out this season. I wonder, because I don't think Chelsea would be significantly better or worse, and I think Ipswich would probably have struggled just as much. So I think that sort of tells you how Chelsea are with their manager. Is Maresca adding value to this squad? Probably not, is the answer, because the more he has been in charge, the worse Chelsea have looked and the worse they've actually gotten. And it looked like all of the sort of positivity from the start of the season seemed to come from and flow from what Mauricio Pochettino managed to do at the back end of last season, winning the final 5 games. So is Maresca adding value to this Chelsea team? I'm not sure. Whereas is Unai Emery adding value to Aston Villa? Like absolutely. I mean, to an extent, he's the club, right? He runs it all. He is the guy. He is possibly the biggest draw to Aston Villa right now. So Maresca, I mean, he's not in the same league. It's not even close.
Give me your top 5 then. I think we can all take as read that Liverpool and Arsenal will be 1 and 2. Who makes up positions 3, 4 and 5 for you?
I find it really difficult to look past Newcastle and Manchester City getting in there. Yeah. I think they're not a given, right? But I think that they would have been my 2 bets. I really don't know about the final spot because we've thought, go back a week and we'll probably say, well, it's Forest's, right? It's Forest. But now that gap is small. I still think Forest can and possibly will edge in there, but maybe they'll be down in 5th rather than in 3rd. It's really hard. If Villa go out of the Champions League, they've got a lot of room to go and they're in good form. They've sort of come from nowhere, like from a Chelsea perspective. It's been, look at Bournemouth. We need Bournemouth to drop points. Oh, look at Brighton. We need Brighton to drop points. Oh, even Brentford, they were sort of almost in that conversation. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, Villa, we've forgotten, like because that group is so congested. So Villa have sort of come from nowhere in my books. I'm going to say that it's going to finish probably Newcastle, Manchester City, then Forest, 3rd, 4th, 5th. That's what I would see. I think Chelsea could be as low as 8th, maybe even 9th by the end of the season.
Wow. I mean, I definitely also had Chelsea outside of my top 5, maybe 6th. I was undecided where to place them, but as far as 9th is pretty ridiculous given where you were at one stage this season. But ultimately,
it's hard to predict. Like the gap is still 6 points, but I'm just like that there just isn't much confidence about where the next win's coming from. The Champions League for Chelsea is massive in a number of ways. I mean, to an extent, it justifies the changes that they've made. Although I think that, not to go too deep on it, the issues go far beyond whether Chelsea managed to scrape into 5th place or not. But watching Arsenal this week and where Arsenal have been for much of my lifetime, seeing them in the Champions League quarterfinal destroy Real Madrid, there's jealousy. Like it's immense jealousy. The Champions League it's so good. It's so good. Even the group stage, even those games where you think, oh, right, well, we'll win this one, or like we're favourites for this game. Like there's no jeopardy in the Conference League. To go 3 years under the new ownership and to not qualify for the Champions League would be unequivocal failure. Like for the money spent, it's shocking. Chelsea need this financially. They need it to keep attracting players. They need it to keep players, and they need it to have some money to spend. Not that it will stop them spending, by the way, but they basically need to make this back.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I've learned a lot about Chelsea and their running to come. Even though you didn't predict Villa to get in the Champions League, no hard feelings. You also didn't predict Chelsea to get in there either. So, I mean, that evens it out, I suppose. But thank you very much for joining us on the podcast, mate. And maybe we'll catch up at the end of the season.
No, thank you very much for having me on. If it makes you feel any better, I would 100% say Villa have got a better chance of getting in than Chelsea. So hopefully that makes up for it a little bit.
We'll take that. Cheers, Tom. Right, Manchester City time. I'm joined by David Mooney from the Blue Moon podcast. Now, I actually think City will go on and win basically all of their games. But does David agree? Well, we're about to find out. Right, David, cheers for joining us, mate. How's things?
Yeah, not bad, sir. Not bad. Getting there.
Talk to me about recent form then. I know it's been a bit of a strange season by Manchester City's standards, but I'm not really bothered about the overall. It's about the here and now for the run-in. Does that turn around against Crystal Palace give you some kind of optimism that you can just keep being relentless for the back end and win lots of games? Is that how it works?
Well, low-key, the form's been a lot better recently. They obviously lost at Forest at the start of March. But since then, I mean, the 2-2 with Brighton wasn't great. They probably deserved to lose that with the chances that Brighton were creating towards the end of that game. But the turnaround against Bournemouth in the FA Cup was a really good performance. There were signs of the old City back in that. Leicester is a tricky one to judge because Leicester are not much cop this season. And then United, both teams were generally awful, but they got out of there with a point in a way that they probably wouldn't have done earlier in the season. And then that Palace game was really weird because they started really badly, and for the first time in a long time, if they'd gone in at half time, 2-1 down, 3-1 down, like kind of that sort of ballpark, you'd go, well, Palace deserve that. It's been a really good half from them. But by the end of the game, City fully deserved that 5-2 sort of turnaround and that scoreline. So it was a real kind of like the markers may be there of a City improvement. And the things that we look out for are things like controlling the game and not letting the opposition break away. Well, obviously they didn't do that at the start of the Palace game, but by the end of it, they'd forced them back. They didn't do that at the start of the Bournemouth game, but by the end of it, they had forced them back and Bournemouth couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So there are signs there. There are signs that things are turning around, yeah.
Talk to me about the injury situation. Villa have got a clean bill of health as it stands and a great amount of squad depth to pick from. What's City's situation like for the final run-in?
Not ideal, but not as bad as it has been all season.
Right.
So the injuries have been a big cause of City's problems this season. They're kind of there. Players have been there in name, but not in spirit, if that makes sense. There's been so many times where players have been on the team sheet and you go, well, that looks a decent team. But then when you drill down into it, you go, well, yeah, but he's injured, and he can't run properly and he's just coming back. And it just kind of snowballs from there. The defence isn't in great shape. They're missing Ake, they're missing Akanji, they're missing Stones, I think, still. And while they've got Diaz and Gvardiol playing centre back, and they brought Kusanov in who can play centre back as well, that it kind of does feel like it's still held together a bit by sticky tape. And they've obviously got Nico O'Reilly playing at left back to cover. It's still a little bit kind of patched up, but it's doing okay. The midfield it feels pretty much back to where it was. De Bruyne feels like we said for the first time after the Palace game that he's played pain-free for the first time. The kind of other players around there that had been fatigued through injury are starting to kind of find their feet again. Low-key Gundogan's had a good end of season as well, despite he had a really bad start to the season, but has been playing quite well in the last few weeks. The big miss is obviously Haaland. Without him, the question is, where do the goals come from? Okay, they were fine on Saturday, but that was Saturday, and in the weeks before, they've struggled to create stuff, and when they have created stuff, they've struggled to put it in the net. They don't have a lot of goals from the wings, Savinho and Marmoush and Grealish. I mean, Grealish isn't there, but they're not big goal contributors. Bernardo's numbers have dropped. Gundogan's numbers have not been great this season. De Bruyne's numbers have dropped. So without Haaland, there's been no figurehead. And it was pleasing to see them hit 5 on Saturday. Because it's not felt like they can do that for a while.
There's obviously one game that stands out that we'll isolate in a second. Everton, Villa, Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth and Fulham looks very winnable as an outsider, as a rival to Manchester City for the Champions League. I think that's the easiest run-in. And Villa aside, hopefully, I wouldn't be surprised if you won every single game. That's how I feel about Man City, whether that's right or wrongly. I'm hoping you can tell me. Let's isolate Villa first of all. That's a massive game, isn't it? We played Newcastle this weekend, 2 Champions League rivals back to back. If Villa get positive results in those, okay, we've got a good chance here. Yeah. Flip that, results go against you, and it's going to be really difficult for Villa.
Yeah, and I think I look at the way the table is as well with Villa. I mean, Villa behind Chelsea before City, but still only a point behind City. It's so tight at the moment. Weirdly, Everton's win at Forest last weekend really helps as well, because it's dragged them back into it in a way that I didn't think anybody was going to catch them. Now, if Newcastle win the game in hand, they go above them. So it's really tight now in that kind of 3-4-5 position. And I think you're right. I think from a City point of view, having currently got that 5th spot, I think Forest feel like they need the end of the season quickly, and I think they'll drop more points. I think Newcastle might be tricky because they seem like they're really flying. And I think from City's point of view, they've just got to not lose that Villa game. I think there's enough points they can pick up elsewhere. Certainly at home. I mean, you would back City to beat Wolves at home, even in the form that City have been in this season. And as I say, the form has been getting better. Bournemouth would be tricky, but I kind of feel like at that stage in the season, penultimate game, their European ambitions have either been realised or not by that stage. It may be a case. Possibly. I was going to say they'll be on the beach, but they literally are on the beach. But I think you kind of get the sense that could be quite a winnable game for City as well. So take 6 points from that one. If they can go to Southampton and win, you've got 9 points there. If you can avoid defeat against Villa, then I think you're pretty much there for a top 5 position. And obviously, this season hasn't been ideal for the way that for what City's aims and objectives were at the start of the season. But you play the hand you're dealt and you adapt accordingly. So this is the hand that City have been dealt, and we know that City are inconsistent this season. So I'm not like you. I wouldn't expect City to win every single game there, aside from the Villa one, for instance. I think there'll be more unexpected drop points, but I think that's what you get for a team that is battling for the top 5. And Chelsea will unexpectedly drop points like they did against Ipswich, and I think Villa will do it. I think Bournemouth will do it. I think Newcastle and Forest will do this. Forest especially, Newcastle less so. But I think everybody will drop points, and I think it's now about just who can hold the nerve the best.
The next segment is manager versus Emery for this video, and this is probably the only one where most people would say, well, Guardiola edges Emery. I've got Emery over Howe, Emery over Maresca pretty comfortably, and Emery over Nuno. You talk about kind of holding the nerve. Is that experience that Guardiola has and the elite level coach that he is he going to be the difference maker in this top 5 race, do you think?
Possibly. I think Guardiola's a bit different because it feels like Guardiola is very idealistic. Like, will not compromise on what he wants the team to do, even if that's what most people would think the situation demands. I mean, you go back to December, Guardiola was taking pelters for still trying to have City press and still trying to have them play in the way that they were doing, because it was obvious they couldn't do it. They didn't have the fitness to do it. But he obviously sees that as the best way to win a football game. You're not going to get a Guardiola team and ask them to drop in and sit deep, play 5 at the back, and not have possession of the ball. That isn't to say that he never compromises, because he does compromise. He has compromised this season and changed the way that they do things. But the ultimate aim is to get back to that style of high pressing, try to win the ball as high as you can, take risks and try and invite pressure in order to play through it. So it's really difficult to say, because that's what a Guardiola team is normally challenging a league with. When it's going for the top 5, it's a bit different. And we've seen certainly this season and last season, when Emery's come up against him with Villa, Guardiola didn't get a kick. I mean, the game at Villa Park earlier this season, it wasn't a contest. I know City scored right at the end, and I can't remember if it was early enough in the game to make it a nervy finish, or if it was so late that it didn't matter. And the game last season, I mean, I know City had Rodri missing and had a few injuries, but Villa was superb. Yeah. And what that does is you kind of suddenly you look at the head-to-head and go, well, certainly on their own patch, Villa have caused City problems there. When it comes to being at the Etihad, it might be a bit different. So, like, head-to-head wise, I think Emery has always had a tough time against Guardiola, but he's won 2 recently, and that starts to move the dial a little bit. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think Guardiola has. I mean, it'd be foolish not to back him, given what he's achieved. But I think he has. I think he probably just edges it. Yeah.
Who makes your top 5 then? I think most people can take Liverpool and Arsenal as read as first and second. So who finishes 3rd, 4th, and 5th for you, mate?
So I actually think Newcastle will leapfrog Forest. I've got a sneaky feeling City will leapfrog Forest as well. Which then, if you put Newcastle in 3rd and City in 4th, it then means you've got one of Forest, Chelsea, Villa for the 5th place. And
whose podcast you're on here, mate?
Yeah, I was just thinking this. But honestly, it could be any, because I look at Villa's recent form and I think you've been quite good. So, I mean, was it 4 wins in a row, is it now? Yeah. So it's Chelsea are bleeding points at various different points. And I think Forest, as I said before, Forest are really desperate for the end of the season, I think. It would be a bold call at this stage to say that they drop out of the top 5 entirely. But that's the way I'm feeling right now. I feel probably Newcastle for 3rd, probably City for 4th, and then probably Villa for 5th. Forest, then Chelsea. I don't know.
Well, we'll see how this video looks in a few weeks' time. Things have changed so quickly over the last 2 or 3 weeks, as we've said, so maybe it looks very different again in another 2 or 3 weeks' time. But Dave, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate your insight into all things Manchester City.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really interested in this section. This is the one I've been looking forward to the most. It's Nottingham Forest and the host of Forest Focus podcast and a former colleague of mine, Matt Davis, who is on holiday in Lanzarote. So enjoy some bird noises in the background as well. Right, Matt, thanks for joining us all the way from Lanzarote on your holiday. Thank you very much. Fingers crossed Forest are also on the beach for the rest of the season. How's things, mate? You okay?
I'm good, as you say. I'm on holiday. I'm guard by Saturday. But yeah, well, as we'll discuss, lots to talk about around that, but hopefully we bounce back. But yeah, good, thank you. Good to speak to you again after a while.
Yeah, good. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Forest is the one I'm most interested in this video. This is the one that we're hopefully Forest blow up a little bit is what most people want to happen. I think if you're not involved in this and you want to see somebody else break up the established elite, the story for Forest to go from relegation threat into Champions League is one that people want to see. I also want to see that if Villa get in there with them at the expense of Villa. Don't care, mate. Get out of those positions. I don't want to see it. But what's the mood right now? The mood like now? I'm not bothered about the season as a whole. Right this second, 6 games to go. Is it nervous? Is it still confident? What's the vibe?
No, I think it's definitely nervous. I mean, the performance against Everton was pretty bad. Along with Fulham at home, probably in a way the worst of the season. I know we got tanked by Bournemouth away, and Fulham we were bad, but yeah, I think fans are very nervous in a sense that it's pressure, and I think we look tired. We've got the smaller squad. Obviously, you guys beat us and made 8 changes, and you've got all that depth that we don't have. Yeah,
reason for them, obviously, like you say, you lost to Everton last minute, lost to us, which is a massive game for Villa to have won that, made the changes, used our squad depth pre-PSG. You know, it's a massive result, and in the context of us kind of chasing you down now, effectively. What about your injury situation? You mentioned the squad, and you don't have that depth. You're kind of relying on this 11, this 12 or 13 got you here. You need now to see it over the line. It's a difficult ask, though, isn't it? Villa had similarities last year with got a good 11, a good squad, but the back end of the season you can really falter a little bit. Villa's advantage last year is obviously they didn't fall out of the top 4 anyway, but even if you had last year, you dropped to 5th, that's it, you're out of it. This year for Forest, you can drop down as far as 5th and still get into it, which is some comfort, I suppose. I'm obviously hoping you drop down to 6th, but the injury situation, what you're working with, is it enough, do you think?
Well, we got Chris Wood back on Saturday, which was really big, and he didn't play well, but just to have him back on the pitch. Yeah, a bit. I think that's what clubs do. I think, you know, if you're 70% fit, can you play? Can you get through it? And then the good thing is we don't play Spurs till a week on Monday, so we've got that longer rest, which I think is massive. Anthony Elanga was back on the bench. Very similar situation. If we're mid-table, if we're mid-table and we've got the FA Cup on the horizon against Man City, he probably doesn't play. So we've rushed them back. Ola is the other big one who's in the same situation. But to have 2 of the big 3 injuries back hopefully stands us in good stead. There is question marks over the squad depth. I'll throw this into it as a Villa podcast. So Alex Moreno came in and didn't play very well at all against Everton. He's been very up and down when he's played of late. So getting Ola back would be pretty massive for us. But yeah, it's that's the big worry. We've got so far in a small squad. Can we limp over the line? Getting Wood and Elanga back, I think, is a big boost for us.
What about the FA Cup? You're like Villa have the FA Cup semi-final in a couple of weeks' time. Classic question earlier in the tournament is, is it a distraction to the league format? Now you're talking semi-final and potential final later in the year. It's not that, but it's another game. It's another chance for injuries. It's another chance to build form, hopefully, or momentum. If you don't win it, maybe it goes the other way, and that hampers your league as well because you're disappointed, or whatever. It's just another kind of curveball thrown into the mix, isn't it, for both of our clubs?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we go into that game, Ryan Yates is suspended, Nico Williams is suspended, so we're already missing 2 of our main players, but at least we'll have them back for the next game, which is Brentford on a Thursday night. So, and I think there's a feeling that it's sort of a no-lose game in a sense. We'd love to go there, but Man City will be favourites. They've got the Wembley experience. We've beaten them in the league, so we know we can do it. Yeah. But I think so much more of the attention right now, as we sit here right now recording this, is on the Champions League and what it can do for us. The FA Cup at the moment feels like a bonus. Maybe when we get to Wembley on the eve of it, it'll be a bigger focus, but Champions League feels like everything to me right now, personally anyway. Your
running really interests me. Like I said to you before we started, this is the section that I was most interested in. I look at your fixtures and think there's definitely 3 winnable games in there, and I think you only need to win 3 more to secure a top 5 finish. I think 9 points was enough before Villa. 9 points is enough for you, just 2 games less now with losing to Villa and Everton's, but it's still 6 games, there's still 3 wins, that's still very much doable. But there's also a part of me that thinks maybe the pressure gets to you, maybe not doing this before gets to you, that if Man City need to win 3 or 6, I'd kind of shrug my shoulders and go, well, yeah, obviously they'll just do that. Newcastle kind of the same. As a Villa fan, I'd back Villa to win 3 out of 6. But looking at Forest, everything they've done so far would suggest, well, yeah, of course they'll win 3 out of 6 because they're a good side this year. Part of me predicts Forest to finish 6th, And then part of me predicts Forest to win 4 out of 6 and finish in the top 3. Like, I find it really difficult to work out what I actually think about you.
I think the Spurs game will probably tell us a lot. I'm hoping that, I don't know, I want Postecoglou to still be in post by the time that comes around, because you look at how they are defensively. I think that's a much better matchup for us than Everton. Everton have got a knack. They just don't lose many games. They draw a lot, and we should have drawn that game. I don't know if people have seen the goal, but we really gifted them the point. So Spurs will tell us a lot in terms of, we've had 9 days rest. Have we got some energy back?
Yeah.
Can we nick it? Can we nick that game? Then we have Brentford at home, which is tough, but it's one we could win. Leicester at home, I really hope we win, obviously. Those are the 3 that will probably tell us a lot. West Ham away, Palace away, I think are tough games. I actually don't think Chelsea at home I think that's easier than those 2.
Yeah.
I think Chelsea, either it goes to the last day and they need to win, which is really tough for us, and I feel like this is a more likely scenario, Chelsea have dropped off. They can't get in the Champions League. They're safe in the Europa League, and that suits us on the last day.
Yeah.
So I do still see the points for us, but I think the Spurs game probably dictates a lot of what kind of shape we're in. Coming off an Everton game, if we play badly again and lose, then definite panic stations, yeah.
The next section is manager versus Emery. So Nuno for you, the experience of the 2 managers. Nuno hasn't done this before, competing for a Champions League place in the Premier League, navigating an FA Cup run at the same time. Obviously, Emery has the experience of doing this last year, hopefully doing it again. We've also got Champions League, as we record anyway, and the FA Cup to contend with as well. And that's an incredible job that we're doing, managing those targets with the squad that we've got, and everything that Emery has built is kind of feels like we're hitting form at the right time. How do you think those 2 managers make the difference for the respective clubs?
I think they both make massive differences, don't they? I mean, Emery's turned Villa around from when he came in, when you guys were struggling under Gerrard. Nuno's done the same for us in a different way. I wouldn't trade Nuno for Emery because of what Nuno's done for us, but I appreciate Emery's obviously an elite manager. So we might have got relegated last season when Nuno came in. But what he's done this season's transformed us completely. So I don't have any worries about the manager. I have more worries about the players and their fitness levels and their anxiety. But I think Nuno's fostered an incredible belief and team spirit. And I imagine this week before we play Spurs will be nothing but relentless positivity and, telling them how good they are. So no worries about the manager. Like I say, it's more players and energy levels. But to me,
I'm really teetering on the side of will Forest do it or not. I think if you lose to Spurs, I'd be saying no, because there's a chance that you completely capitulate from there and the other clubs in the race. For Villa last year, if we messed up, it was only Spurs. If Forest mess up, it's Newcastle, City, Spurs, and maybe Chelsea ready to pounce, and that's a much more nervy ending to the season.
It's us, City, Newcastle, and Villa, I think, are the main contenders. I know Chelsea are in there. I might be proven totally wrong, but I think Chelsea will all drop off. And I look at it, and I know Villa fans don't like me saying this, but next week, if you were to lose both your games against City and Newcastle, then as a Forest fan, that's probably the best outcome for us. That would probably take you out.
I think if we lose to Newcastle, we're probably out of it.
And that's the pressure on you, isn't it? I mean, Newcastle, I watched Newcastle v Man United, and Man United played all right first half, but then Newcastle just steamrolled them. Newcastle have got this physicality and intensity that when they're playing well, they're really playing well. And they've carried that Carabao Cup momentum in that makes me think they're probably going to get in. I was looking at the form just now. City and Forest's record over the last 6 is exactly the same. Because we've lost the last 2, everyone sees it completely differently. So I think there's going to be lots of, the cliche swings and roundabouts. And probably the next week decides like 80% of it. Can we beat Spurs? Can you get the results you need against City and Newcastle? And if you were to get 1 point from those 4 games, those 2 games, you're probably sat here thinking we're in bother now. Run
me through your top 5 then. I think we can all take Liverpool 1, Arsenal 2 as red. So who finishes 3rd, 4th and 5th?
I'd say right now and for Newcastle will finish 3rd, City will finish 4th, and we'll finish 5th. And I think I'll take that.
I'll take that, because I think if you, as the Forest fan, think 5th, I think as a neutral or as a rival to you in the situation, I think 6th then. Because I'm really undecided. I think you'll either be in the top 4 or not in the Champions League at all. Because I think City and Newcastle will be third and fourth, and then it's between us and you for fifth or sixth, is how I see it at the moment.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I think
so
it's
you
Forest,
backing you for
Forest
fifth. Maybe that's you being optimistic for fifth, and actually it's worse than that.
No, I'm not. I'm pretty unoptimistic, as you know. I'm pretty miserable. Yeah, I think it's between, you know, that for years working with me. I think it's between us and Villa right now. Maybe it changes though. I mean, let's say we beat Spurs, and you get 6 points from your next two. Then the City fan, they're going to be panicking, and the Newcastle fans are going to. So right now, I say we'll finish fifth and you'll finish sixth, but it could change rapidly. And the other thing is as well, like, I know you've got a good squad, but you are playing the Champions League and the FA Cup still. And if you probably, I mean, I don't know, speaking out to you, you're probably going to go out to PSG. But if you don't, then that's two more massive games.
Yeah, true.
So I would love it if you beat PSG, because I think that'd make it even harder for you to overhaul us. But yeah.
We'll just have to win the Champions League instead in that case to get into it.
Yeah, then we can finish sixth, yeah.
Right, Matt, thank you very much for joining me. I will clarify that the birds tweeting throughout this weren't a sound effect. I've not added waves in the background. You really can hear that you're on location in Spain. So thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. And absolutely no luck for the rest of the season.
Same to you.
Next up is Newcastle United, this weekend's opponents. I'm going to hand over to Andrew Musgrove, who is the host of the Everything is Black and White podcast. Andrew, thanks for joining me. How's things, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Nervous for the weekend?
Not too nervous. I'm more nervous about being back on your show, to be honest, after the last time I was on. I thought I'd been banned.
No, not by me. I'll have you on any time, mate. It's just the comments. Was that the time when I was on holiday and we did an episode about, like, Villa should be wary about the Champions League? Is that the one?
Yes, I said you would probably just get knocked out early on, and I've been proved horrendously wrong on that. But we all get some things wrong, don't we?
Of course we do. Yeah, absolutely. But welcome back to the show, mate. Hopefully people are nicer to you in the comments for this one. I'm talking to all of the clubs that are in the running for the Champions League as it stands. You know, maybe one of us is out of the running at the weekend. Who knows? Hope not. I don't really care about your season as a whole. I just want to know about recent form. This is where we are now. This is what really matters. You just beat Man United. Got Crystal Palace midweek for your game in hand, and then massive game obviously against us at the weekend. But what's the general mood like? Surely it's massively buoyant after the League Cup win.
Yeah, the spirit's absolutely fantastic. And also, you know, we've won the game since the League Cup with probably our best player not really been on form in Alexander Isak. He's not really been himself since that cup final victory. And what we've got is players stepping up and sharing responsibility in terms of goals and being creative, you know, Harvey Barnes, Jacob Murphy. So that's really refreshing to see. But I've got a stat for you, which will show you just why I'm that confident Newcastle United are going to get into the Premier League, because no club other than Liverpool have picked up more points since December the 14th in the Premier League than Newcastle.
Really?
So Newcastle are on a fantastic run of form. Liverpool have picked up 41 points. Newcastle 36, and Liverpool have played 2 more games in that time as well. What we've seen is Newcastle United just find the next level of that form at the right time as well. Everyone probably thought that the League Cup may be the kind of the end of the season. You know, it will peter out because you've had this massive cup win, the first domestic cup in 70 years. The celebrations were absolutely crazy. And yeah, understandably, people were like, there's going to be a hangover. And there hasn't been. And Newcastle have been brilliant without having to do too much. Obviously, the opposition hasn't been brilliant. And Crystal Palace and then Aston Villa are probably the first real 2 teams that I'd be a little bit wary of. Not scared, not fearful, but wary of. But, you know, you're going to get in the Champions League. You have to be beating these sort of sides. And I'm looking forward to it.
Just talk to me about injuries a little bit before we get into the game at the weekend. What's the situation around the squad and the players you've got for this run-in?
Perfectly fine. I mean, we'd like to have Ben Botman.
That's a shame.
At centre-back, but he's been out for quite a while. So we haven't got any new injury concerns. I mean, the biggest one is Eddie Howe, bless him, who's been in hospital. And at the time of recording, I believe he's still in hospital. We don't know, what's wrong with him. He managed to send a good luck message to the team after... or rather a well-done message after beating Manchester United. He managed to watch the game. Whether he'll be back on the touchline against Aston Villa, I'm not too sure. I don't think he'll be there for the Crystal Palace game on Wednesday. But he's the biggest concern because he's huge. You know, imagine trying to win a game without your manager barking instructions. But we managed to do it against Manchester United. Jason Tyndall and Graham Jones were very hands-on. There was no, earpiece or anything like that. It was solely down to them, and they managed it, and we won 4-1. So full confidence they could do the same against Palace, and then hopefully Villa on Saturday. But in terms of the players, everything looks pretty rosy. I mean, Gordon's just come back, picked up an injury against Albania for England. Also just been suspended, so he missed the cup final, but he came off the bench against Man United. Other than that, it's fine. I think the biggest concern, fatigue, because Newcastle United have really only got their starting 11, maybe 12, 13 players. The squad depth's not there. You look at Aston Villa, for example, and what you guys can do off the bench is scary. Newcastle can't do that. Fingers crossed they find that adrenaline and they can make it through the game and pick up all 3 points.
From a Villa perspective, you'll want to, obviously, we're at home, we want to win, but if we can kind of keep you at bay and then be able to change the game off the bench, that will be in Villa's favour for something that you can't do, as you've just mentioned. That game is absolutely huge. I don't want this to turn into a Villa-Newcastle preview, because we'll be doing that content later in the week, so I'm sure you will as well. But it's such a massive game. Your run-in is Palace in midweek, as you said, Villa at the weekend, Ipswich, Brighton, Chelsea, Arsenal and Everton. Everton play 3 of the teams in this race for the top 5. They play Man City at the weekend and they play Chelsea as well. So Everton, as somebody else said, kind of maybe hold the key to the Champions League if they can nick some points off some of the others. I think that's a really difficult run-in that you've got. I think there's enough winnable games there for you to finish in the top 5. I do believe that, and obviously I'm hoping Villa isn't one of them. But that's not an easy run-in, is it?
It's not, but if everybody manages to stay fit, I don't look at the run-in with anything to fear, because Newcastle United have played the best and beaten the best, even going down to Arsenal, where they've got a terrible record, looking at that and thinking, oh dear, because we've seen them dismantle Arsenal at the Emirates early in the League Cup. And Arsenal have shown in recent weeks that actually they're not this title challenging Arsenal that they should be. Of course, they beat Real Madrid, but in the league, they're not the force that they could be and should be. So, yes, it's a difficult run on paper, but I look at Chelsea. There'll be a lot of pressure on their manager to get them into the Champions League. A lot of them teams might not have or won't have anything to play for. I mean, you mentioned Everton. They're playing for pride, really, because they're safe. Ipswich will most likely beat down. I mean, and we're just waiting on them not being able to get enough points to get out of it. So, yes, on paper, there's some difficult games, but then every game in the Premier League is difficult, and it's just about applying the right attitude to it and handling yourself well, not underestimating an opposition, but not paying them too much respect, and just going out and doing what you can do at the best of your ability. And look, if Newcastle play at the best of their ability, then few teams are able to match them. I mean, they are that good. It's just, again, whether they've got the numbers and the bodies to make sure they can prolong this run of form. But, and we don't want to make it into a Villa Newcastle preview, but it's a big game for Aston Villa, because if Newcastle win the next 2 games, the points gap to Villa,
I think we'd probably be out of it if you beat us at the weekend. I think it would be. We play Man City the week after. And if you were to beat them, maybe it's Man City we can overtake, and I think we have Fulham, Bournemouth, Man United, and Spurs after those. So winnable games, of course, but to lose to Newcastle at Villa Park would be a humongous blow.
But you just mentioned you're running there, and again, okay, on paper it is harder than Newcastle's. But I look at it and think, well, you've got a couple of teams that could test you, and a couple of teams that you look at and think, Spurs, for example. But Manchester United, you'll be without Rashford, one assumes, because of the loan deal. Bournemouth can be a very dangerous side. I wouldn't mind a couple of their players in the Newcastle United squad next season. Like, I go back to it's a very simple message, but there are no easy games in the Premier League, and I don't think your running is maybe as easy as some would suggest it to be. But it goes down to, again, just applying yourself in the right manner. And if you do that, then you probably will be fine. But the interesting thing, Dan, is that obviously Forest were nearly out of sight, and they've stumbled a little bit. But Arsenal, I know Newcastle, they win the game in hand, 59 points to be on before they face Villa, and let's say they beat Villa, and Arsenal stumble again. Arsenal aren't necessarily out of this in terms of locking up second. I think they will. I think they will finish second. But I think they're a lot closer than maybe they'd like to admit.
Yeah, well, we'll wrap up the top five in a second. The next segment is manager versus Emery, and I absolutely don't mean this to be in a disrespectful way because of what is happening with Eddie Howe as we're recording, and obviously our best wishes from a Villa perspective go out to him at this time. It's a very different dynamic, isn't it, than this probably was when both managers joined the clubs. I think I still obviously would say if you were ranking managers, I put Emery above Howe, but Howe is now a trophy winner. He's got Champions League football with Newcastle before. He's going for it again. Could finish as high as third, maybe second if Arsenal completely blow up. Like, this isn't massive levels of inexperience between the two as it would be with, as we spoke in the last episode, Emery and Maresca. Totally different. Whether Eddie Howe is back in the dugout for the Villa game or not, it doesn't matter at the moment. He's still involved for the rest of the running, we hope. What is that situation like, for those two levels of managers, for what they mean for their respective clubs?
I think the only thing Emery has over Eddie Howe is managing European competitions, and we've seen that this season. Look, I know people in the comments will be shouting at us and reminding me what I said when we spoke at the beginning of the season, and I hold my hands up and I got that totally wrong. And I shouldn't have made that prediction, because what I should have done is looked at Emery's record, and he's absolutely brilliant when it comes to European Cup competitions. And it's great to see you guys on this journey. And that's the one thing he has over Howe, because Howe's journey into the Champions League last season was his first. And that's difficult. It's difficult enough to manage the squad and injuries and balance the games and the midweek games and what have you. I think as any manager, it doesn't matter how many times you've done it, you will always find issues that can be a little bit difficult to manage. But when it's your first time and you're inexperienced at it, it's a lot harder. And I think Newcastle found that out the hard way. They were very naive against AC Milan. They could have progressed into the Europa League, but they went for broke and then ended up losing the game, and they shouldn't have done that. So it's about that experience in Europe, which I think sets them apart. But other than that, I don't think there's too much difference between them, really. I think Eddie Howe is the best English coach in the league. I think he's one of the best managers in the Premier League. I mean, to do what he's done at Newcastle when they were looking destined to go down to the Championship, to turn them into a Champions League side, a cup winning side, it's remarkable. And to do it as well with I think there was 7 players that were here pre-takeover, so pre the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund coming in and taking Newcastle over. There were 7 players who were there prior to that featured in that cup final, which is unbelievable. It is. I mean, when you look at talking about levels, like the levels to where Newcastle were pre-takeover to where they are now is astonishing. And to win a cup and to potentially get into the Champions League with this squad, it's a miracle. Because again, we talk about depth. Look at what Villa have got. Look at what Chelsea have got. Look at what some of the other sides around have got. Newcastle have not got that in numbers or quality, and yet here we are talking about Newcastle potentially finishing third. It's remarkable.
I think we've got an idea of what your top 5 is anyway, but do you want to just reveal your who you think is going to finish in those positions?
Having watched Forest over the weekend, I think they might fall out of the top 5. So I'm going to go City third, Newcastle fourth, and then Villa fifth.
That's exactly what I've got. Those are my predictions as well. We've said before, I'm just joking about getting stick from our audience in the past, but I want Newcastle to do well. If Villa are doing well, like, you win the League Cup, fine, we'll win the FA Cup then. You get into the Champions League, yeah, right, we'll do it as well then. Even if it's Forest, and again with Villa, I want teams that are not Tottenham, Man United, Chelsea, Arsenal, etc., to be in the Champions League, to be winning stuff, because it's different. I don't want to see those guys that win everything, and be in the Champions League and it be a closed shop. I want others to get in there. If you do it, it'll be your second in 3 years. If Forest do it, it'll be their first in 40 odd years. If Villa do it, it'll be successive seasons. Let's have a bit of that. Let's let it be different. So I don't want you to do it at the expense of Villa, obviously, and you wouldn't want us to do it at the expense of Newcastle. But if we both do it together, because there's the extra space this year, let's both do it.
Yeah. And it's just refreshing. And I think every neutral fan will want to see that, because it's what the Premier League needs. It's so boring just to have the same teams at the top of the table winning things. And this is why I really enjoyed seeing Manchester United fall so far, and City as well to a degree, although they look like they're probably going to get somewhere back to the best. But the Premier League needs a kind of revamp every now and then. And look, I've said Forest are going to miss out, and that's done through gritted teeth. But as you said, I don't want them having Champions League football at the expense of Newcastle. Hey, if it comes at the expense of Forest, then sorry, fine. I just want Newcastle getting the Champions League. But I think that would be, if you're a fan of, I don't know, someone down on mid-table and Everton, for example, I think you'd be willing Forest to finish third.
Yeah, absolutely.
Villa, which is ironic because the amount of money they've spent, people may forget that. But if you take out that side of things, it's a very nice story. And I'm just all for teams like Newcastle and Villa, even further down, Fulham, Bournemouth, Brighton, trying to break into this establishment because it needs it. It really does.
Right, Andrew, thank you very much for your input on this video. Really appreciate it, and absolutely bad luck for the weekend.
Thank you.
Right, that's it for this one. We'll be back in a couple of days for the Newcastle preview and post-match of massive game. If you've enjoyed this one, do let us know. Get involved in the comments about your thoughts on the race for the Champions League as well. Thank you very much for watching or listening to this episode of the Claret and Blue podcast, and we'll see you again in a couple of days.